Let's talk a little bit about the Friday before the Preakness, which is Black Eyed Susan Friday, Pimlico Special Friday. And you can get your Preakness Day Pass performances for Saturday at Pimlico right now at drf.com. You can also get betting strategies and some DRF picks if you need help. So you want to go to shop.drf.com, past performances, betting strategies, DRF picks. Dan Illman and David Aragona will be helping you with the betting strategies. So those are really good if you haven't taken a look at them. Analysis for each race, and then they'll give you suggested wagers and all the reasoning. You'll get analysis from both Dan and then David back and forth. It's really good stuff, and it's very better friendly if you're someone who's just looking for a little bit of help on a big day like Saturday. I'm looking for a little bit of help, and whenever I need help, I just call in one of my good friends, one of the best wingmen that is ever out there, Barry Spears, the sniper. My man, how we doing today?
Hey, Gino, I'm just so excited. The Preakness is Saturday. Looks like the weather's going to be great for it. I know they had some concerns about some rain, and I think they're still going to get some, but it really shouldn't affect the racing too much. So I'm ready to go make some money this weekend.
Okay, so Barry and I will share some thoughts on the Preakness field after we talk about the pick five for Friday. We're going to look at Friday, Pimlico. They have a late pick five sequence. Remember, when you're playing the races at Pimlico, the low takeout pick fives, those are your best wagers. The takeout, but the difference between the pick fours and the pick fives is a ton. So you always want to look for the best wagers where you can get the most money back. If you're someone who's playing often, and if you're someone who likes to play the multi-race exotics, I know pick fives are harder than pick fours, but they're a little bit more worth it, especially when you add the takeout into the fact. So, Barry, let's talk about races 9 through 13 on Friday. Some really strong races on. There have been a couple years where the Saturday, like the Friday, Saturday for the Preakness, some of the undercards would suffer. Because what ends up happening a lot of times, you'll get the horses that run in the Derby. A lot of horses run in the undercard races there. And then for the most part, the horses that ran on Oaks and Derby Day, they don't come back in 2 weeks. They'll come
Yeah,
back on Belmont undercard day, right? And then 5 weeks, that just makes a lot more sense for the timing. So sometimes these stakes races can get a little bit of the short end of the stick, but there's actually some real quality races. There's some good betting races both Friday, Saturday, some big fields, and some like star horses showing up on both days. So I really thought, both Friday and Saturday, you and I are going to look at the pick fives for both of those days over the next few days. I thought they came up really strong.
yeah. For whatever these cards are lacking in quote unquote star power, they make up for in competitiveness.
Yep.
And a lot of full fields, a lot of horses that are not so much B teamers, but really on the verge of being stars or top level horses. So we're
You
gonna
get some
get us.
horses that are kind of starting their years
Yeah,
too. Like
exactly.
the horses that the connections maybe made a decision. Do you want to go into a little bit of a tougher spot 2 weeks ago? Or can you go in maybe a little softer spot just to get your year started? A couple of horses that we'll look at over the next few days that are in that too. So I had a fun time handicapping this pick five sequence. Barry and I are going to do our best to try to lead you to a few winners. We're going to put a ticket together ourselves on Friday and try to nail this thing too, my man. As we go to race number 9 at Pimlico, we're looking at the DRF past performances. We're looking at the formulator style past performances, and it's race number 9. So from a talking standpoint, the one of the horses that kind of fits the bill for what I was just discussing is in this race, the number 6, She Feels Pretty. This is a grade 1 winner. She's a really nice 3-year-old filly. She was only beaten a half length in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies turf. But her trainer did say, yeah, she's not 100% right now. She's a little short. We have big plans for her for the second half of the year. So we wanted to pick out a spot for her that wasn't a grade 1 or a graded spot. And, she's certainly, with her A game, would be the best one in here. But when a horse has not run in as long as she has, and you have to worry about that layoff, she has not run since the very beginning of November, since the Breeders' Cup. That's a long layoff to deal with. And she's not exactly fast early, right? She's a little bit more of a closer in her 3 races. She hasn't really shown a whole lot of speed. So while she does look really strong, you can poke some holes in her too for the layoff and for her running style. Very nice filly to start with, though, in the Hilltop.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely have to start with that horse, but this race in particular is very tough to start off a sequence like this because of that fact. Uh,
Mhm.
because you got to make a decision here early in your tickets construction whether you want to have a horse like She Feels Pretty in it or not. I
Because
mean,
if you do, you don't want to go deep here.
right, exactly. And you don't want to waste your bullets on some horses that may not have a chance if you really think that she can overpower this field, which she kind of does look like on paper.
And she could.
But
She very well could. Yeah.
because there's not much in here. I mean, the outside horses, the 9 and the 10, you could really do without.
Yep.
Turf Rocket had a bunch of times, running in maiden races, just broke the maiden recently, so that one is kind of iffy. Um, the Seven Society Ball is another one
Tough
that
spot for first time on the grass, you know?
exactly, yeah. So if you take those four out, and then you have the rest of them, six through the one, it becomes a kind of a race where it's really tough to figure because you have a horse like Royal Wintour who kind of looks just as good as as She Feels Pretty, but just has been running recently. You have Expatriate, who is from the Chad Brown barn, who unveiled a spray in this race last year, kind of doing the same thing. Had a
And
race over at Tampa, shows up here.
I
I
kind
kind
of
of
like
like
her.
this horse.
Me
Yeah.
too. Yeah. You know what? Let's watch her race a little bit. And this is why, because I thought her race wasn't the normal type of race that you win on the grass. Just like going a little bit wide, going a little bit longer. Let's see if we can get this up. Why it's not pulling up here. Yeah, for Expatriate. So okay, here we go. Hey, Pete, what's going on? So she's the number 10 in the race that we're watching here. And I thought this was just a pretty visually impressive performance. So, because she has to go kind of 4+ wide going into the turn, Barry, and she's pretty wide in this race, has to settle 3 deep. So, watch her early into the turn. She just not able to get in here the way this race is going. So, she's actually going to get floated wide going into the turn, and then that's where she, and look at the way that that the horses inside of her floated her all the way out. She gets really shuffled out wide into the turn, and then she's just forced to settle 3 deep here. This is more of a dirt trip. Like, this generally doesn't win as much on the grass when you're sitting wide like this and you're 3 deep and the rest of the field just gets to save a lot more ground than you. But I was pretty impressed here, Barry. You go a little bit farther and you see, I mean, even with that wide trip, still able to loom up, contend. She's a little green here. You can see, right? They're kind of like when they kind of try to straighten her out a little bit, which I like because I think there might be even a little bit more of a ceiling here. And while the margin looks close, this is kind of a well-measured win, right? Like, she was never getting beat here.
Yeah. And honestly, the ground loss has to be accounted for here in a major way because that was her first start,
Yep.
and she really got into trouble and was wide the whole way. She had no right winning that race and still did. So, that speaks to the improvement that may be on the horizon. And
Mm-hmm.
I like this one quite a bit.
Yeah.
Chad Brown does this year after year after year with horses, similar layoff, comes back off a couple of months and then pops a nice one in first time stake race at a decent price. And that's probably the only time you're going to get a price on a horse like this too.
I think you did a really nice job of like laying this race out, because just in this particular race, some of the deeper long shots I had a tough time getting to as well. And like the horses you mentioned towards the outside, I couldn't really get there. Turf Rocket felt like she got a perfect trip, and that's why she kind of was able to put it all together last time out. And I think you really sniffed it out perfectly. Like, I thought the 3 was the real key horse in the race if you're looking for another horse or couple to use. And
And
that's
just
why.
better, the 5, is interesting too in this
Yep.
race. That one race at the fairgrounds on the turf was pretty decent as well. Will probably be a little bit behind, kind of the first flight, or where a horse like Expatriate would want to sit, and probably Royal Wintour also. Um,
But you
but
can't knock
man,
this filly. Like, you
yeah,
can't knock what she's done.
she's done everything they've asked on muddy tracks, on the turf. So getting back to turf is probably what this horse really wants to do. And
And the only
I could,
two races she lost, or her other two races, not lost, the only race she lost was taken off the turf to
right.
start. She's wanted to be on the grass in all three of her starts. So, yeah, she's really difficult for me to exclude as well. And when you're just looking at, the race shape will be really key, because the one thing that I've been very impressed with, Dettori, is how
On the
aggressive he is
lead.
as a rider.
Yeah.
He does a really nice job of sniffing things out. And I just, not something that I had thought as someone who didn't watch him so many times, like riding 7 races on a card, as I did when he came into Southern California. And I was like, wow, look at him picking all of these horses up and getting them in speed, and horses that hadn't even shown speed. So I think he does a great job when there's a need to be aggressive in a race, and just maybe getting a little more aggressive with this horse and making sure she's not too far out of it. That would be helpful here. And that's what you're right about it being tricky, because she shows up and she has a little bit of maturity and improvement from 2 to 3. She'll be super tough. But this is a good race for gamblers, because you can poke some holes in her. You can feel like this might be a spot to try to beat her. Or you can absolutely see some people say, you know what? The barn's very good off the bench. I think this is a not as difficult spot to get her started. She should win this race, and I'm going to play it like that and then kind of spread in the rest of the pick 5. I can see either approach. My way will probably be her and one other,
Right. Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. Yeah,
like maybe 3
that's
and
usually the
6.
way to go.
Yeah.
Because of the layoff. I know layoffs don't mean what they used to. If you go back like this, let's say 10 years, maybe even a little longer
Mm-hmm.
than that, layoffs used to make a difference.
Oh, yeah.
Now horses run,
So
just as well.
infrequent, yeah,
Yeah,
that doesn't, so the horses aren't nearly as fit. So coming off a layoff, you don't have as much of a disadvantage as you used to.
correct. And you see horses, come off of long layoffs. This is 6 months. I mean, this horse, got a good spot. Like,
Mm-hmm.
if you ever wanted to bring a horse back that was a champion or close to being a champion, is this one.
Yep.
This is probably the best spot to do it.
Yep. I agree. That's a good way to kick off the pick 5 with the Hilltop race number 9 on Friday at Pimlico. Let's move to race number 10. This one is the grade 3 Miss Preakness. We have 3-year-old fillies going 6 furlongs on the dirt, and we will talk about some of the major players in this one. Mystic Lake will get a little value from the inside, coming in from Woodbine, has some speed. You Almost Had Me was 3rd in the Beaumont and was well defeated by Diamonds and Pearls, but was actually favored in that race, making her first start of the year, and we can expect some improvement for her second start off the bench. Launch has won 3 out of the last 4. She's gotten really good down at Gulfstream Park as of late. Lady Moscato, she won 2 in a row for D. Wayne Lucas. Then she tried the 8 Bells. Maybe we can say she just didn't like the slop in there, because she previously didn't enjoy an off racetrack. Others that could get some support, well, those are probably the major players as far as the wagering is concerned. There's a couple others I'll want to talk about, but let's start with you over here, Barry. Who's some of the horses, some of these 3-year-old fillies on your radar here?
Yeah, this is a tough race. Top to bottom, everybody is this is a very competitive field, and
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a lot of speed in here, and I think the pace is going to heat up quite a bit. I mean, you have Mystic Lake, who does our best work on the lead. Value Area, although doesn't have a rider named, I don't know if they're really going to go in this spot, but that one could add to the pace.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you Almost Had Me is another horse that's got to be forwardly placed.
Yep.
You got Miss Harriet, the 6, Carmelina, the 7, the outside horse, Let Them Watch. Even the 10 Discreet Ops will probably have to get in the mix really early.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this is going to be a pretty quick pace.
I do too.
And there's a couple horses that I zeroed in on. Closing Act is one of them.
Oh, me too. Yeah, absolutely.
I like that the race off the bench at Lone Star. I think that he just overpowered that field. It was just way better than that competition. Went to the lead.
Like a perfect tune-up for this too, right?
Exactly, and showed improvement off that layoff, which I talk about a lot. Is really a key with horses coming off a layoff, especially from 2 to 3. It's really effective when
With
you
that
see those
much
horses.
time off, right? From
Exactly.
September to April. So we're talking all of that time from the early part of your 2-year-old season to almost the middle part of your 3-year-old season where you grow up and you develop. And this filly was good early on. She won her first couple. Then they put her in the Schuylerville. She doesn't run poorly that day. She finishes third. And let's just eliminate the spinaway because that's the race that just sent her to the bench for a long time.
Yeah,
And,
and it was against Bright Work, Ways and Means, who are really good horses.
mm-hmm,
Better than this competition. Not saying that
absolutely.
Closing Act couldn't get there. I mean, obviously she's been running with those types, but she wasn't there at that point. And then she comes off the bench, runs an improved race, and she's in the best hands. You got America's leading trainer of all time. I don't see how this one isn't a contender in this spot.
I completely agree. And I don't think she got the lead last time, going a little bit longer in a race where she drew the rail and then she kind of missed the break and they sort of had to rush her from the inside. It was one of those where, yeah, she won on the lead, but she's not a need the lead type. Or
Yeah,
she can
and she was
sit
just
off,
better. Yeah, she was just
especially
better
from
than
the
that.
outside. She'll sit off a little bit. Yeah, that second start at 3, second start off the 7.5-month break. And also just a little small thing too. She beat in that race at Lone Star. She beat older horses.
Hmm.
So while they're not this quality, they are older, more experienced horses. Where the horse who was third that day was a 6-year-old. There's a 5-year-old and a couple other 4-year-olds in there. Now she gets to move back in here in a race with 3-year-old fillies. So again, just lots of little things for a horse who's going to be a fair price. I don't think she'll be that price, but if she's 8-1, I think that's fine. Like if she's half of her
Yeah.
price on the morning line, I still think that's very fair in here. And you were going to point out another horse who you thought might get the setup. Is it
The
Moscato?
9.
The
No,
9.
yeah, Lady
Okay.
Moscato is definitely on the radar, but uh, Cap Classique is
Yep.
another one. I think this horse has some upside. Definitely likes the track in and around Maryland. So I would definitely take a double take with this one, especially Brittany Russell, Sheldon Russell. I mean, they're hard to beat in the state of Maryland in general, and this horse seems pretty good. Um, you
And
know,
remember, so if you're looking at this race, sometimes people will not realize what their handicapping angles are. And let me explain a little bit more on that. So you and I are talking about this race as a race that we think is going to be pretty quick early. So we're looking for some horses from off the pace. People may look at a filly like this and go, she lost to Carmelina last time out, and I don't really even like Carmelina that much in this race. But the thing is, Carmelina is probably going to beat her a lot of times in smaller fields when they have not a lot of other speed. And that was exactly the case when they faced on December the 30th. This is a totally different style of race that we're looking at. That's how we're handicapping it. So in that, I would really upgrade Cap Classique, even though she was defeated by Carmelita the last time they faced, because I think the race could set up way better for her in this spot. It's a little small
yeah.
thing. We do things, and I do this a lot too as handicappers. Like we look sometimes because you want to get through stuff as quick as you can. And a lot of times you'll be dismissive and you'll kind of move on. But catch yourself and just kind of remind yourself like, oh yeah, if those races don't have speed, a horse like Carmelina will probably always beat a horse like Cap Classique.
Yeah, absolutely. What's funny is Andy Serling said this, I think, on Twitter or X the other day. When Mage ran in the Preakness, and this ties into this a little bit. When Mage ran in the Preakness, it wasn't that he didn't run his race. He was up against the pace dynamics and the race shape. And that's kind of the same sort of situation you have here with Cap Classique. That's how Carmelita beat him, like you
Yep.
explained.
Yep.
So that one actually merits a better shot in this race because it's a fuller field. There's more speed, and it could compromise the chances of a horse like Carmelina. Now,
Absolutely.
Lady Moscato is the other one. You know, although this one is a little tougher to figure because they run a lot. This horse runs a lot, which is
Mm-hmm.
great. I love to see this, but the inconsistency follows.
She's a little
And
harder to trust.
yes, but if you take her 2024 record, I think she fits the
It
bill
makes a
here,
lot of
and
sense this year, right?
right, and deserves this opportunity to see what she can do because she's clearly improved It's just, when you run a lot like that, you're going to throw in some duds.
And
And
easy
she's
excuses for we can make excuses for the two duds this year, as you're pointing out. The first one was her first start off the bench. Then she wins back-to-back races. Then she goes in the 8 bells where she's in a little tough and it's on a sloppy track. So we could probably make double the excuses there. And now she's in a spot where it fits her way better from a class standpoint and from a trip standpoint. She could get a really nice trip in here sitting 2 or 3 lengths off the pace, maybe
Mhm.
getting the jump on some of the deeper closers.
Yeah, also worth noting though, is one of the things that I've been paying attention to a lot more is this horse has not won without Lasix, which
Yep.
sometimes can be okay, but she's run well without it, just hasn't won.
At least it's
Um,
worth pointing out always.
yeah,
All these things are always worth pointing out.
yeah, it's just something that you might want to consider. So if you're looking at contenders beyond the favorite, I myself personally have the 8 and 9 as a top tier, and then Lady Moscato is kind of like a second tier.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I had eight
And
five.
Launch is another one that kind of you can figure might have a say in this because she's really fast, and
She can
Louis
sit a
Size
little
could
bit.
probably sit with her.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. She might want to sit a little bit off the pace,
and
but
she's
you never
faced some nice
know.
horses. Like a horse like Into Champagne would be really tough in this spot.
Or our Harper Rose
Yeah,
is
yeah, those are
suitable.
nice, fast fillies that she stacks up well in this race. It's just, is she going to get the trip? A horse like the 3 you almost had me. You just have to really, can you be forgiving for the April 7th race where she ran into a horse that totally freaked that day? Denim and Pearls won by almost 9 lengths.
Yeah.
So she had a fast start. She sat a length off. She was up the challenge for the lead. She faded. So here's my sort of hemming and hawing and back and forth. I can make an excuse for her for that race. I still don't like how far she dropped out of it and how like she quickly was so willing to just kind of throw in the towel and back up. Like, I don't think that she was going to win that race by any means, but I don't mind when you get beat by 12 lengths instead of maybe like 7 or 8. I do sort of when you're going to be the 2-1 favorite or a short price. Like, if this horse was I wouldn't mind as much, but now I'm sort of wondering, like, okay, is she the same filly that she was at 2?
Right.
And that's the question I start to ask. And if I'm asking that about a horse who's going to be a really short price, then I'm not sure. So I, I'm a little trepidatious with her because I can see it both ways. But if I have some mixed feelings and I think she's going to be a short price, and on top of that, I'm a little bit worried about the race shape for her, where she could be in between some speeds, at least with the 1 going. And then horses like the 4, the 6, the 7, all to her outside could be flashing speed. So she could be in a little bit of a tough spot and have to show us she can really come from off the pace. I mean, she's done that, but I think she
I
wants to
don't
be more
really,
forward.
yeah, I was gonna say I don't really think she wants to come off the pace. I think it was just a matter of her being on the rail in that race, in particular on November 25th.
And it's also different when you're in a group that you're like way better than. You can
Exactly.
you
You
can
can do
do
whatever.
whatever, sit
You're just
wide, make a
better.
scoop move. It's like when you're playing with your little
It,
brother at
I was gonna
basketball in the
say it's just
backyard.
like,
You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like,
it's like playing a bunch of 10-year-olds in basketball. You're bigger, faster, stronger than them, and there's nothing they can do to beat you.
there's a funny video that LeBron's sons posted up like a month ago of like him and the 3 of them out in the back shooting together, and LeBron's just talking trash to them and like getting in their head while they're just having a shooting contest, right? And he's just like old, like giving them some old man trash talk, and then he said, "I'm the greatest of all time." And he's yelling at them, "You don't know me, you can't get in my head," and I'm just laughing. Like it reminds me a little bit like of what we're seeing. Uh, Barry, anything else we want to finish up with in the Miss Preakness?
No, that's a nice race. I would say as far as pick 5 sequences go, that might be a little bit of a spread race. You might want
Yeah.
to go a little deeper, just to
And it depends
cover
on
your
how you're playing the
bases.
first race, which, like, if you're
True.
playing the first race, she feels pretty and you're short, you probably got to be throwing, "You almost had me out here," unless you're going to be short, and then spreading in some of your like others. Because as much as we talk about who you're betting, how you're betting is always equally as important.
That's correct. I mean, handicapping is only a third of the battle.
Yeah. Yeah.
Making your
Absolutely.
ticket and then playing your ticket are
Hmm.
the other 2/3.
Yep. Okay, let's get to race number 11. This is the middle part of this pick 5 sequence. We're up to the very one. The 5
There's
furlong.
just a second the very one.
The we got the back, which I know some people are very adamant about because it's grammatically correct,
Yes.
right? The horse is named the very one. So if you're
How does
naming
this one have
a
two though?
stake,
There's
right?
two two
Yeah,
named after. The one at Gulfstream is like, isn't
there,
it a marathon race? It's like a mile and
yeah,
3/8 or something.
exactly. So we've got a lot of love for the very one. Let's dive into race number 11. Let's talk quickly just about some of the major players in here, and then we'll get more into them. Queen of the Mud, no knocks on this one. 3 races overall. The last 2 have been victories, and one on the lead, one sitting off, proving that she has no problem passing horses coming from off the pace a little bit. The 4 Coffee Maker for Wesley Ward, we don't see on the track all that much. She's certainly capable of showing up with huge efforts when we see her, but she's just her form's a little cagey because she's not consistently racing. Others in here that will get some support. The 8, All That Magic, has not raced since November of last year, but she fits very well with this group, and she's won in different ways. And I think maybe towards the outside, a horse like Future Is Now will get some support with that outside speed there. So Barry, 5 furlongs on the turf course here. Let's get into this field. Who are some of the horses you want to discuss?
Yeah, it's interesting that the one Queen of the Mud draws where she is because I think that really compromises her chances. I don't think they can afford to kind of take back and then try to
Mm-hmm.
circle the field or anything like that. I think they're going to have to force the issue, and Pratt's going to have to decide to just go for the gusto from the jump, and I think that affects the rest of the race because Coffee Maker um, really had a tough performance in in that Woodford. I mean, just didn't show up at all,
I know.
and it was really head scratching because this horse, despite not running very much, every time usually this horse kind of shows up and is close or in and around, at the finish and just was nowhere.
And that's
So
what's discerning because now she's a 5-year-old. She only has 10 races. And so we know she has the tough time just staying there. And that's a career worst, as you were pointing out. I mean, even when when she's disappointing at a short price, she always shows up with a way better effort than that.
yeah, and that was really surprising. So it may, kind of foreshadow that maybe she's lost a step and might be ripe for an upset. That being said, there's not really much in this race that could beat her. I think All That Magic is probably one of the horses that I like quite a bit
Me
in this
too.
spot. Getting Louis Saez, who rode her pretty good back October 22nd at Keeneland from well off the pace, and it showed a little bit of versatility that she really didn't show in the past.
That was the race that
And
jumped out to me too. That was the one. She's down on the inside. She's 6 lengths off, and she angles out at the top of the lane. She's kind of getting bumped around too. She
mhm.
almost gets pushed into a really tight spot, but she just keeps going. She's tough. Eliminate the race on the yielding turf course at Parks that day. That was a brutal like bog of a turf. It was just a really
Yeah, and
bad
a
one.
lot of horses had trouble. Roses for Deborah is in that race,
Yeah,
and she'd
she just
probably
didn't
be,
fire really. She was
one
like
to
super.
two in this spot. Yeah.
And then that was also in a race against the boys. Um, so yeah, you eliminate that race. She's this barn, the Demasi barn, they're 26 for their last 133 off of this type of a layoff. So that's 20% with a $1.54 ROI over the last 5 years. Really capable, really solid. So this horse can win in different ways. Showed us that she can come from off the pace. I don't have a problem with her layoff because we know that this is a capable barn off the bench. I think she's a big time player for me.
Yeah, and the 10 I think might merit a second look because of the trip that this horse is probably going to get. Probably
Yep.
won't be on the lead, but will be right up close.
She faced
You
the
can
boys last time out too. You can kind of eliminate that. She faced Witty and Charging horses who we'll be talking about tomorrow in the
mhm.
Saturday pick 5. So if you eliminate that race and then look at her races with fillies where she's in with Stone
Stone
Silent
Silent, yeah.
and like that is very competitive in this race. That form right there.
Absolutely. Absolutely, and I think this horse with Paco, Paco's a very smart rider, and he'll get this horse in a good stalking position. And if she's far in front and gets to lead, then fine. But I don't think that's their goal. I think they're trying to sit on the outside and make a nice run, kind of stalk and pounce sort of
Yep.
thing. And that would probably be the most ideal trip. But you got to tread lightly because you don't want to take too short of a price on a horse like Futures now because of the post and the potential to be hung out wide with a quick pace and it might spell doom. But you definitely might want to keep that one in mind.
So just a few price plays if you're spreading this race or you're looking for some unders. Barry, you and I liked this 3 horse a little bit last time, Port Townsend. And I
Mm,
think, she was in a little tough last time out, as you were pointing out. That was the Roses for Deborah race. And she had a fast start. She was right on the lead. She was sitting second. She was second early stretch. Things got tight when she was backing up. And as she was starting to tire, she backed up pretty badly, but she could be forwardly placed throughout in here, and the 5 furlongs might really help her. Just that little shorter, because she could be forwardly placed down towards the inside. She's going to go third start of the form cycle. I think she's semi-interesting at a price. And then just a couple other live ones that, at least underneath. I think the 6 is probably going to need a race, but I mean, her turf form is really good. She's fast. I'm worried about other speed in here, but both the 6 and the 7 are underneath horses with speed that I wouldn't be shocked to see them outrun their odds, hit the board in here. Probably horses I'd like to play next time when they have a race under them a little bit more. But, Basarati is perfect at Pimlico. The turf form's really good. She's probably, you can eliminate her last race before the long layoff last time out. She's fired fresh before. So, we know she's capable there. And I think the same thing for Shoshana, who actually has also fired fresh before the last couple times she's come off the bench. Just a few to throw downfield, Barry.
Well,
And
yeah, I mean, honestly, Bossarati might be a real interesting horse. Won twice at Pimlico
yep,
at going this distance. And ever since the switch to the turf, this horse has been running a lot better.
it's like a new horse there.
Hmm.
So a couple others if you wanted to go a little deeper, maybe to use underneath in some of your exotics as we move to race number 12, the 12th and 13th, 2 big races on the Friday card. First up, it's the grade 3 Pimlico Special, 1.3 miles on the dirt. Major players in here, the 2, Kingsbarns, who has won 2 in a row this year. Kingsbarns was your 2023 Louisiana Derby winner, who was 14th in the Kentucky Derby and who's been good so far as a 4-year-old. We will also see the number 5, Red Route 1, who's a 4-year-old, 8-5. He's a stone cold closer. We know what we're going to get from him, and he's a stone cold closer. He needs a little pace, and he needs these 1.125 races and above. Like, you can just see mile and a 16th is just a little short for him. He needs a little bit more distance and a little bit of pace, and when he gets that, he'll give you a late run. And Joel is a perfect fit for him because
Oh
that's,
yeah,
he's just a
absolutely.
perfect fit for him. Strong closer. He'll get him going late. They'll launch a big rally. Yeah, and those 2, Barry, from a gambling standpoint, they will be head and shoulders, I think, above the rest of this field as they're 7-5 and 8-5 on the morning line.
Yeah, I think Kings Barnes might even be lower, way lower than that. Once it's all said and done, I mean, there's really not much speed in this race, and there's not much to beat either. You have a horse like Pyrenees.
That's what the only horse
Who,
that's at a value that I think can be interesting because of what you're saying.
yeah,
Like because he can put himself in a good spot. He's lightly raced. He's on the upswing. He's making his 3rd start, but really kind of feels like after a break, like his 2nd start now as a 4-year-old. And I completely agree with you. There's not. That's why it's a little more difficult here for me to get to Red Route 1. I think we'll get a good closing 2nd or 3rd from him. If I'm trying to find value in this race, it would be the way you're talking about, who can sit close.
yeah, and Harlow Cap is the other one. I think at a decent price. That will probably need to be forwardly placed. And if you go back through this horse's past performances, you can see Angel Empire in there twice, um, Midnight
And
Rising, Rocket
he's
Can,
probably in here for Red Route 1 to help
most
him,
likely.
to help him as much as possible. Not that he's just going to be a dead rabbit out there, but him just making sure that nobody else gets loose or that the pace is fair enough to give his stablemate a shot in here. Because he, he's I kind of like horses like Red Route One that you just know what you're going to get from.
Yeah, it's
Like
consistent.
he's super, you know what you're going to get from him. He'll always show up. He's always going to run, like, launch a late rally. And if they go fast, he will come closing. And so, but in this race, he feels beatable.
Yeah, definitely, because he, despite him running well in a lot of races, he doesn't win all that much,
Nope.
and he kind of finishes in the money. He's always around it, but sometimes doesn't get the prize, and I think that's what we're going to see because of the race, the way the race shapes up and the pace dynamics. It's really up against a horse like Red Route One.
Yep.
But he'll definitely catch action at the windows. So
And you see Kings Barnes here, who he took a little step forward in his second start at 3, at 4. This is a lot of stuff that you kind of point out in the templates of horses that you like, and how
mhm.
he was running the same, like his best races last year. He came back in his first start at 4 off a long layoff and was running right in that mix. And he took a little step forward, and now he doesn't really even have to improve much. He can run the same sort of race, but we just figure he has one more step forward to take here. This is a good spot for him because he's not yet dealing with the real tip top of the division yet either.
Right, he's getting there. He's going to get there
Yep,
by probably by the end of the season,
he
Breeders'
will.
Cup time.
I bet
But
you he'll
for
get it to Saratoga, you know what I
yeah,
mean? And we'll get him a race or two up there, like, against real top quality. But for now, he just feels like they're being gradual with him, which is smart. And yeah, they went from 7 to the mile and 3/16 last time out. He's going to put himself in a really good spot. He shouldn't be too far out of it. Like, lots of positives. And then
yeah,
Pyrenees.
I
Yeah,
I I didn't like his 2 races that he's run already, and he's ran pretty good in both of them.
yeah.
I think there's still more,
Mm-hmm.
and I think he can jump up a little bit more, and this race really sets up well for Kings Barnes.
It does. And then you were mentioning Pyrenees, who would be the other one for me.
Mhm.
Pyrenees, everything for him really makes a lot of sense. Early on in his career, he's a horse who you could see was not running bad races. He had a couple, he just didn't fire in his debut. That was sprinting. Then he was a fine second behind Tappett's Conquest in a strong race at Churchill Downs in a field of 10. He was actually favored over Rocket Can at Churchill, but that was a race that came up on a sloppy track, and he just completely misses the break that day. Comes back and he was a fine third. So we saw a couple efforts to show that he had ability early on. Then he's off for a full year, shows back up, and then boom, he looks like a different horse because his running style has changed. He's just way more tactical all of a sudden. And that just shows you that he's more mature. He may have had some issues. They figured things out with him, and boom, now he's in the race. And we know he can pass horses, but he can also, show the way and be on the lead in here. He's also shown that he's actually fine with the sloppy track. So we probably don't just say that was the only reason he ran poorly in that previous race back in October 2022. And he's stepping forward. Can we get one more improvement if you're just looking at speed figures? And now he goes from 90 to 95 and he's right
Sure.
there with Kingsbarn. Like, we don't need huge improvement from him. And we have reason to think that the way the race shapes up could help him show that improvement. He feels like if he's like 5-1 and above, he's the horse that you may get a little value on in here if you don't like those 2 horses who are going to be under 2-1.
Right, exactly. Those are the fallbacks that
Yeah,
can actually win the race. There's only a couple of them. I'm not really sure what to do with Time for Trouble,
that was the next
um,
one to talk about, right? Yeah,
because I don't, this horse has the ability, but
he's
just
better than his last race.
yes, definitely
So
better
because
than his last race.
he had an okay start, but then he was taken back. He was inside. He was behind horses. He was in between. He was in kind of a tricky spot because he was 4 wide and he was in between horses. So the being wide is supposed to keep you from being in between. So if you're wide and in between, you're getting the worst of both
The
worlds.
double
You're
whammy.
getting like the losing all the ground and you're not in a comfortable spot. So I think we can really eliminate that race. And if you're playing him just like we were trying to do with the 4, if you're playing him using his Essex as your base, and he has like a 93 buyer as his top, and we're going to say, can he make a little bit of improvement off of that race where he was behind a really solid first mission? And he's 7 now, so we're not asking him to step up and run huge races that we've never seen, but can he just improve off of that 92 a little bit and give himself now third start off the bench, like right back up towards his top? And that would put him in the mix. I'm not completely against him.
No, he's not out of the question because the race could essentially fall into his lap, so to
He's
speak,
got a little versatility too. Like
if he gets the jump on Red Route Run.
Red Route. Yep, that's the key. He's not. You got to get a couple lengths of a jump on him when you start winding up. Time for trouble there. A good look at the Pimlico Special, race number 12 on Friday. Let's finish things up on Friday's pick 5 with the Black Eyed Susan, the grade 2 Black Eyed Susan for 3-year-old fillies, going a mile and an eighth in here. We have some of the major players, Lemon Muffin, who won the Honeybee and then was disappointing in the fantasy and did not fire. Yeah, did not fire in the Kentucky Oaks. We have Gunsong, who comes out of some really nice races. She's faced some nice fillies with Power Squeeze, Ways and Means, Into Champagne, Leslie's Rose, Leslie's Loot, quality 3-year-old fillies. Same can be said for who could ask for more. She faced some nice ones recently too with Power Squeeze and Fiona's Magic and Leslie's Rose, Where's My Ring? Corporso hooked a real nice one, Nothing Like You, out at Santa Anita last time out in the grade 2 Santa Anita Oaks. And Recharge was undefeated before the fantasy, where she ran into the Kentucky Oaks winner, Torpedo Anna. So Barry, the outside of the field, I think looks like they'll take a lot of the action in here. Who are some of the major players for you?
Yeah, I like a horse quite a bit in here in Gunsong.
Me too.
I think this horse is really primed to give a great effort on
I
Friday.
actually wouldn't be shocked if she's favored in this race.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. I think the morning line is a little bit off because I think the Brad Cox horse on the the Asmussen horse on the outside, Recharge, will probably take more money than she really should.
I didn't
really hasn't
know
proven anything.
I wasn't sure if the 7, like I would, if I were picking who I thought would be favored in this race, I might pick the 7 fourth.
It's tough. I mean, it's hard to say because I want to say, I think it was Dan Blacker that shipped a horse out from Santa Anita last year.
Straight no
ran
chaser.
a hole, yeah. Excuse me, and just ran a hole in the wind out there at Pimlico. Maybe they think that's what's going to happen with this one. I don't know. But yeah, it's really a toss-up because these horses are really close in talent and ability, and it's just kind of a rider's race, so to speak. Who's going to get the best trip? And I'm not sure from the 7 hole if Corposo can actually get the trip that they need.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we look at Gunsong, and if those of you out there who watch our videos, and this is something you hear me talk about weekly with different horses, everything that this filly's done makes sense when you just go through her whole career. She wins her career debut. She's raced 5 times. She comes back in her second start. It's on a sloppy track. You can tell she just doesn't get over it. She's got a really low speed figure that day. But she actually even loses to a horse named Leslie's Loot. And that filly comes back and wins her next start at Fairgrounds, winning a small stakes race that day by 3+ lengths. So debut winner, second start, she loses to a next out winner. That's a stakes horse. Then in her third start, it's again in an off track. It's on a good track. She loses to a horse named Leslie's Rose. That's a grade 1 winner. Leslie's Rose won the Ashland and earned a 95 buyer speed figure. She was one of the top betting choices in the Kentucky Oaks. So another strong race where you can't really be hard on her for the loss to Leslie's Rose by just a length that day. She moves to a mile at Gulfstream. She wins in a first level allowance, and she sits off a little bit, but they just kind of handle her like you would handle a horse that you think is better than that group. You just move to the lead early, and you just don't kind of play around with it. I think she can sit fine. I really do. Like, I don't think she needs the lead, but I think she probably wants to be, her best races will be on it. And then that last race, if any of the 3 horses that were in front of her were in this race back, they would be right at this. They would be like Power Squeeze
8 to 5
would be favored, and Into Champagne would be probably 5-2 or 3-1, and the morning line favorite are close to it. So those three horses just lost to three better fillies that were all three in the Kentucky Oaks that day.
Yeah.
And she had to do a lot of the dirty work. That was kind of a weird race too, when horses kind of moved early and the pace rampened up and quickened up, and it's set up for power squeeze. So she, to me, doing the archaeology with her past performances, doing the digging, she just makes so much sense in here.
Yeah, it definitely does. Another horse that could kind of play into this a little bit is the 4, Call Another Play. I think this horse, they figured something out with this horse, obviously, because she's ripped off 3 straight wins at Laurel, winning going away, upon the stretch out. I know she ran a mile race back in November, and that was a complete debacle. She posted a 27 buyer that day. But since that point, things have turned around. I mean,
Yep.
she's been closer to races, up close in races, and I think it was just, kind of the 3-year-old learning how to run. And I think she's figured something out, whether it was the trainer or the horse itself. Um, I think she might be okay in this spot, especially with her running style. She doesn't really need the lead. She'll be in and around it, and kind of getting better. So that horse I might want to keep on my radar too.
The one other one for me is, let's say there's a version of this race where we end up getting the 1, Jeannie Marie, flashing speed from the rail. The 2 has some races where they haven't been all that far out of it. We could see the 5, Gun Song, the 7, Corposo, and the 8 version of this race where they're all forwardly placed and they're all trying to, jockey for position. If that happens, this could set up for the 6 to run a
Hmm.
better race than she may have been able to run so far in some of her races, because the rate, they haven't always shaped up all that well for her, but there's some talent there, there's ability, and the blinkers come on. So could they just help her get a little more focused, a little bit closer early, and then launch her rally? So I'm going to use her in some spots too, because I do think there is a version of this race, if you're doing the simulation, where all these horses end up going and she's the beneficiary.
Yeah, time for pace figures have her the fastest closer in the race. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't doubt that at all. And she probably will be running. And I think the blinkers will only help that. She's in the past has gotten into some traffic trouble, which you would expect from a closer like this. But if she's ahead of that a little bit, and I think that's the idea of the blinkers, is to get
Yep.
ahead of some of that traffic, she might be okay in this spot at a decent price.
So here's a look at the pick 5 for Friday. Best of luck to all of you playing the Black Eyed Susan pick 5. Some fun betting races leading you in, and some quality. A couple of these races, you have nice horses who, are heavy favorites, but they're not all going to win, and they feel like they're some vulnerable ones you can take a shot against. Barry, we got some big news on Wednesday morning, before you and I started recording this one, that the morning line favorite for the Preakness, Muth, is going to be scratched. Came down with a fever, so now we will be left with a field of 8. So we're looking at the odds based off the morning line that included Muth. These will be very much different now when you eliminate the 8-5 favorite. Mystic Dan will take a lot of money, and then the next 3 horses, Catching Freedom, Tuscan Gold, Imagination, they're all going to take money. It seems to me like Tuscan Gold has been the wise guy-ish horse that's a lot of people are excited about. But I'm also curious if now, because one Baffert is out, if the other Baffert gets some of that money. That's kind of what David Aragona was thinking, that
Yeah.
maybe the Imagination takes some of the other Baffert money there and he gets a little more bet down. So kind of interesting to see what will happen, because I think Dan will be your favorite for sure. And then that next tier of horses, I really wouldn't be shocked if you told me any one of those 3 were your second choice. I would say, though, Tuscan Gold or Imagination will get bet a little bit more than Catching Freedom now, just eliminating a major pace horse like Muth.
Yeah, I personally, I mean, I might be, you know, a stretch here, but I thought Imagination might be favored here. Mystic Dan going off second choice. They're going to be close in the wagering for sure.
They'll be, yeah.
Um,
So you're agreeing with me in that we feel like, I think if they were both, if Muth was in the race, I almost feel like Tuscan Gold would have been the wise guy horse. It's weird, but like now
Yeah,
with the one Baffert horse coming out, it almost feels like okay, now everybody's kind of like dead set on imagination's going. Got to
yeah.
go from the outside. Now the key is who else is going with him because Dan
I don't know.
doesn't right because Dan doesn't want to be too far out of it, and he actually had a fantastic start in the Derby. He got out of the gate so quickly, so smooth, and then Brian Hernandez Jr. was just able to pick where he wanted to go, and it was perfect. He let all those horses who wanted to go really fast go in front of him. He sat back right behind him on the inside, worked out perfect. But then you've got the two Lucas horses. Both of them showed speed in their last start, and either one of them could show speed. Seize the Gray was not a speed horse before, and then he was involved in like wicked fractions in the Pat Day Mile, and he ran a bang up race there. And if I'm just looking at those two horses, Just Steel with Joel jumping aboard, I feel like he may be taking back a little bit with Joel, and maybe Seize the Gray is the one that goes of those two.
Right, and then you still have the other Catching Freedom who likes to run zigzags in the stretch, but still runs fast. I
Yep,
mean, this is a really interesting race. It could go a lot of ways. I wouldn't say, I obviously my heart wants Mystic Dan to win, just so we could see a Triple Crown winner win at Saratoga. That would be
that'd be
great.
fun. Oh, just the going into it is a blast when you have the
Right.
possibility of it for a few weeks.
Exactly, yeah. But it's hard to see how this race is really going to shape up. But
Yeah, I
we'll
agree.
go over it tomorrow. But I mean, I think this is a very very tough race all the way
Yeah.
around.
Yeah. So Barry and I will be back to talk about the Saturday pick five for Pimlico. We'll go in over all the pick five races leading you into the Preakness, and then we'll talk about the Preakness. I'm also going to have Angela Herman join me for just a Preakness where we go through each of the horses, give a positive, give a negative, anything. Angela will also talk to us a little bit about Canterbury, which is opening up coming up this weekend. Barry, what do you guys have over at Going in Circles and Big Mondays right now with Chuck Simon?
Yeah, we're a little hiatus. We took a week off, and because there really wasn't much doing, um, and the Preakness didn't really get all that hype until today.
Yeah,
So I
that's
think Chuck
right.
is going to write some things up, and you know, going forward, we're going to still have our guests and do our thing every Monday. So definitely be on the lookout for that. I'll pop up a few places here and there. So, you can always find us on X, Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, wherever you want, we're there.
Barry, buddy, thank you so much for the help. You're pulling double duty this week again, and we'll be talking about the pick five for Saturday. We wish all of you the best of luck in your plays. Remember, head to drf.com for whatever you need. Those past performances are available for Saturday at Pimlico. If you're watching this on YouTube, do me a favor if you can, hit the like and subscribe if you have not done so. What that does, it just shares it around more. More people get a chance to see the videos, end up getting a few more subscribers here and there. Hopefully, we can help lead some of you in the right direction and send you into the winner's circle. Barry and I are here each and every week. Very lucky to have a good friend and a sharp handicapper join me for whatever the big races are. We'll be talking about them. And this week, it's all about Pimlico. Friday for Black Eyed Susan Day. And then we'll be back to talk about Saturday for Preakness Saturday. Good luck, everyone. And we'll be talking to you again for that late pick five for Saturday.